Hey,
Can you?
David, how are you?
Great. How are you?
Good. Nice to see you. Nice to meet you.
You too. You look like you're in a very scholarly surrounding. Are you? Where are you?
Yeah, just at my office in downtown Regina, Saskatchewan, and it's dark and cold. And this is my little closet that I'm working in today. So,
You are my fifth VIP Zoom today.
oh wow, wow. Well, this has been a pretty big success, I think. Eh? Like it's I've seen some of your interviews with I think it was Giggins maybe, and
Yeah.
and
Steve
some of the
Lewis.
guys talking about this. Yeah, Steve Lewis. That was the other guy in the Beach Boys basement, and you were talking about the overwhelming response to the VIP thing.
Yeah, we spent several. We've been thinking about it for years, so like I guess 3 or 4 years now, and just kind of nothing just ever seemed to stick. Because when we were thinking, okay, gold membership, silver membership, bronze membership, something like that, and it just never seemed to kind of grab hold. And then what I did is I had that kind of broken down that way with a bunch of bullet point ideas, and I sent it out to the editorial staff for ESQ, and then I sent it out to a buddy who works for NBC Sports because I figured he must, at the very least, and he's a subscriber, and I figured he'd probably give me some insight that things I don't even think about because he deals with on such a large scale with things, and all of them just came back with little tidbits and little ideas, and it just helped me kind of sharpen the pencil, so to speak, in terms of the focus of what we wanted to do. And it's actually gotten better because I sent you the PDF, right? So that
Yes.
was one increment. And have you had time to look at that?
Yeah, it's great. I love it. It's
Okay,
amazing. Yeah.
thank you. And then something that we didn't plan when we launched the VIP thing, we did plan the 30 minutes with me. That has turned easily into 45 minutes to an hour, which is fine because I'm like a kid in a candy store talking about this music. But then the other part of it is we're probably going to be visited by a surprise guest. So that's another thing that I'm enjoying doing. Now, I don't know how old you are, but there's another thing I'm doing, and I got the idea. It's not an original idea by any means. I'm a big Marx Brothers fan.
Sure.
And although the show is from the 1950s, I'm familiar with Groucho Marx's "You Bet Your Life." And on that show, there'd be a secret word. It was just an everyday word. And if somebody said it during his show, then the duck would pop down and then they would win money. So we're not giving away money, but don't want you to get the wrong idea. But I have written an everyday word in this envelope that I hope I remember to show you at the end of the Zoom if you don't say it. It's an
Okay.
everyday word. It's not in the lexicon of Beach Boys language. That would be way too easy. But the thing that and I think I've talked about this on either, I can't remember, Giggins or Steve Lewis's show or something. But there's this is the one of a kind historical thing that Paul Mertens recorded. I think it's the instrumental from Reimagine's Gershwin that he used this harmonica for. I think it's Plenty of Nothing, where it's just this is the
Yeah, it's
harmonica.
great. Yeah.
And so then he ended up taking it on tour, so he autographed it.
Wow.
So I'm wanting to give it away. I actually had Paul on as a special guest. I think last week. I don't remember what day it was, but he was on, and I had him retell the story to that guest, that VIP member, and I jokingly said, when I got this in the mail, I was trying to figure out a way to keep it myself because it's such a cool thing. I mean, it's just, and that this was just like a test thing that Paul laid down and recorded, thinking that Brian was going to come in the next day and record a vocal for it. And Brian said, no, we're going to keep it as an instrumental. So it's this harmonica. It's just so cool. And I want to give it away. It's just, it'll happen. If nobody says the word, I might have to get the next grouping of Zooms I do down the road. I may have to make it a little bit easier. It's a very common word.
I love the game show aspect of this now. You've taken this to the next level. I love it. Great. Man, I was just watching you talking about Dean Torrance on
Steve,
what show was it?
Steve
Yes,
Lewis. Yeah,
was it Steve Lewis? And was it on that show that you were telling me that, or you were telling him that that Dean Torrance keeps his Grammy on his toilet?
yeah, yeah.
Is that true? Really?
I've been in his bathroom.
Really? That's amazing. So I'm a fan of Jan and Dean, and I'm familiar, where they intersect with the Beach Boys, obviously, but I'm not sure how he was done wrong or how him and Jan were done wrong by the record company that he's got that disdain for the music scene, or
Well, he and Jan, if you were really to kind of go back to what made Jan and Dean so distinctive, other than any other music act anywhere, was that they were college students.
sure,
I can't say they were college students first, but they did not stray from their studies. Dean was going to USC, studying to be I think his major was graphic arts, and Jan was going to initially UCLA and then the California School of Medicine or something like that, where he was studying to be a doctor,
right,
and but then Jan got more serious about music and was beginning to pay less attention to his studies and more attention to music. So I imagine had Jan not had his accident, that's the direction Jan would have continued to have gone. I could see him getting into soundtracks for motion pictures. I
yep,
really see that's kind of and of course they would have had a television show opposite the Monkees because they did Jan and Dean on the Run, a pilot that was produced
that's
by
right.
William Asher, I think, and his wife was Elizabeth Montgomery because she makes a cameo in the pilot. And so they were going to be on ABC, and the Monkees were on NBC, I think. So they were going to air opposite one another, and the difference was Jan and Dean were already well known, so I'm sure their show would have been quite successful. Um, but so Jan and Dean, though, never were into the establishment. They because they were college kids, they would go in and the record company would say things to them like, or Cold Gems or their lawyers or whoever would say things like, you have to do this. And they'd say, well, why do we have to do it? And they'd say, well, because we told you. No, we're not going to do it. And you have to remember, Jan, his father worked with Howard Hughes and was on this, was it the Spruce? I always get this wrong. Spruce Goose? What was the
Yep,
name of yeah.
the plane, yeah,
William Barry, Jan's father, is in that plane when that flew.
it's amazing.
So you're talking about like a lot of money. Jan was a brat, way more than Dean was. Jan would skip school. I mean, Dean's talked about this in the Jan and Dean biography, the A&E biography. He says he'd look out the window and there's this guy walking down the sidewalk in the middle of school, and he goes, "Who's that guy? I want to be whoever he is. I want to be out there with him." So Jan was always this kind of against the establishment person. So when he and Dean and Jan teamed up, that just kind of went with who they were. They were very punk, not necessarily punk rock, but punk behavior.
Yep.
If you think of the Little Old Lady from Pasadena album cover, Dean is wearing a sweatshirt that says Blue Fox. Well, the Blue Fox was a stripper joint down in Mexico.
I had no idea. That's fascinating. That's amazing.
So again, that them saying, kind of putting the middle
Yep.
finger up at any chance they could. That's what they wanted to do. So like the famous photo of the Little Old Lady from Pasadena picture sleeve, they're wearing one another's clothes, and the musical note is upside down on purpose.
Ah,
So they were always just, they just wanted to have fun. They knew that the music was a serious aspect of it because that's what made them money, but they would tour during the summer. And then when school year started back, they'd go back to school. So the idea that that Liberty Records or anybody else was going to tell them how they were going to conduct themselves as music artists was ludicrous in their minds because they looked at their education. Well, Dean certainly, I can't speak for Jan because again, he was steering more towards the music prior to the accident. Dean just always considered his education first and foremost. And so that's why if you ever watch any footage of them, Dean, there's an appearance of them in Hawaii where Jan is performing You Really Know How to Hurt a Guy. And they're walking out on this big, long, like, pier thing around with people all around them. and Dean is falling off the stage on purpose. And it's just like it doesn't. I'm just gonna be goofy, and I'm gonna fall around, and I'm gonna fall over myself, and kind of like the beginning of Dick Van Dyke, when he trips on the.
On the
And
couch.
it was Jan had the accident. Liberty was then pushing for material, and so they put out Popsicle, and then the album, and then so Dean, then the single was Popsicle with Norwegian Wood on and Norwegian Wood was actually the A side, and so that was being sent out as a promotional single. Now Jan's family heritage is Norwegian, so
Okay.
I think that's why Jan never even recorded it to begin with. First of all, both Jan and Dean were Beatle fans, but like so many other people. But I think that song may have in particular drew Jan because his family were Norwegian. So I think that was a part of that. Oh, the Dean's never told me that. That's just something I kind of connected the dots on. But so Liberty gets the single ready, Norwegian Wood back with Popsicle, and I think this is actually before the Popsicle album. So, but this is after Fillet of Soul. Now, Fillet of Soul was a disaster because Jan and Dean were trying to get out of their contract with Liberty. They had to turn in another album. Liberty was asking for another live album. And this is 66. They just had this tremendous success with Command Performance in 65. They didn't see any reason to do another live album. Not that soon. It just didn't make any sense to them. And so they thought, well, okay. They went and did 2 shows at the Hullabaloo nightclub, which were to be the Fillet of Soul. Did you ever get the Rejected Masters Fillet of Soul that came out that I co-produced in September of 2017?
No, I did not.
Okay, so that's the complete thing as it was originally envisioned by
Everything.
Jan and Dean. And the asset tape that they turned into Liberty said fillet of shit on one side of the label, and then the other side it said fill it with shit. Another play on fillet.
Yeah, sure.
And so what they did was they recorded these 2 shows. At some point in one of the 2 shows, somebody sneezed, and Jan said, "Do you need an analgesic?" So they were listening to the show, but you couldn't hear the sneeze or the cough or whatever it was. And so they thought, well, let's go to the sound effects library, because by that time Jan and Dean loved sound effects, right? They recorded their own skateboard because skateboard sound effects didn't exist. So they recorded their own skateboard for Sidewalk Surfing. And so they were used to the idea, in Dead Man's Curve, they used the car accident crash. So they were used to the idea of using sound effects. So they went to the sound effect library, found machine guns, cows mooing, cars crashing, belching, which they may have done themselves. And they just threw it together. It became like a cacophony of stuff that they put right on top of the live recording. And they handed that in to Liberty. And now, naturally, as you might imagine, Liberty sat there and said,
"What the hell is this?
What is this? We can't release this." And they were like, "Well, this is, yeah." And they said, "Well, you can't do this." And they said, yes, we can. They said, no, you can't. You don't understand. You're signed to our label. You have to do what we tell you. And they said, no, we don't. He's going to go back to UCLA. I'm going to go back to USC. We're college students. We have this other thing going on. See, they were convinced that they didn't have to do anything anybody told them, because unlike any other recording act, that was not strictly their livelihood. So they had, certainly in Dean's mind, he was going to finish college. It didn't matter even if the TV show took off, he was still going to get his degree. That was first and foremost. The Jan and Dean thing, it wasn't a hobby, but it was something that he did when he had time. So, and the same was true with Jan, but again, I think by that time, Jan was leaning hard into the music industry. And so they just turned that in. They wanted out of their Liberty contract. Here's the final album. Liberty says, no, this isn't going to work. So then Liberty takes leftover songs or studio recordings of stuff that maybe didn't make other albums or B-sides or something, and then they threw out their own Fillet of Soul, called it Fillet of Soul. And there's a couple of the live, there's a hint, like 4 or 5 of the live cuts from this Hullabaloo nightclub that are on the Liberty released Fillet of Soul, but without all the silly cacophony of BS that Jan and Dean layered on it. So then in 71, oh, okay, so I finished the Popsicle thing. So then Popsicle happens, and Dean he literally goes into the mailroom at Liberty Records, unbeknownst to the suits, and he grabs a Sharpie, because back in those days, like, the DJs would know to play the side that had like a star on it. So Dean just took a Sharpie and just started making a bunch, not actual stars, but like asterisks. Like he like just draw a bunch of Sharpie lines over one another to indicate play this side. And he did that for Popsicle. And he went and he just stayed, like, he spent, I don't know of how many days he went back, but I know he spent at least one day in the mailroom with the guys in the mailroom just going through all these things so they would play Popsicle. Because he just thought, if people were to play Norwegian Wood, why would they play that when they have the Beatles version to play? It doesn't make any sense. So he went in there, and I actually have one of those starred 45.
Handwritten stars by Dean Torrance. That's amazing. Yeah.
And and I have the Liberty envelope that it was put in. So so that they're already soured. They're trying to get out of their contract. Jan has his accident. And then the Popsicle thing happens. And then, so Dean's disdain for the way that they treated them or thought that they had control over them, it just was never sat well with Dean. Dean took the graphic design element of the packaging and the liner notes that were on Jan and Dean releases seriously. Even though the liner notes were goofy, he took it seriously. And so the packaging was important to him. The look, the way that they were being presented was important to him. But then when they would perform, like I said, he was just goofy, right? Because that was the persona that he was trying to give out, which would have worked in the TV show, kind of like a Peter Tork almost. Because Peter Tork was not a silly guy. He was silly on the Monkees, but he was quite an accomplished musician. And so it was similarly, Dean always played the goof, and Jan was the straight man. But Jan was just as goofy, but he was the straight guy. It was like a little bit more like Laurel and Hardy, because Jan and Dean were huge Laurel and Hardy fans. And I'll tell you, here's another story. So Jan and Dean went to New York. I think that's where Murray the K was, if I'm remembering correctly. And they were to appear to promote their latest record, whatever it was, on Murray the K's radio show. And I think he was a morning DJ. They were to appear on his show and promote their record. Well, they woke up to get ready, and it was either Jan or Dean discovered that a Laurel and Hardy movie was on TV. So the two of them decided that that was more important than going to see Murray the K, because they wanted to watch the Laurel and Hardy movie. So that's what they did. And it naturally pissed off Murray the K. But they didn't care. They just, that's just how they were. And so so fast forward to 71, now you have a situation where Dean still wants people to hear Fillet of Soul as it was intended. So the Jan and Dean anthology album comes out with 3 sides being studio cuts, and then the 4th side being this abridged version of the cacophony. And I bought the Jan and Dean album, the anthology album, when I was probably 13 or 14. It was after I saw Dead Man's Curve on TV. And I listened to that, and I loved it. I didn't know exactly what I was listening to, why all the stuff was on it, like the cows mooing, and I didn't know why it was there, but I just thought it was hysterical. So it took me probably 30 years to get Dean to because he didn't have the reels. He just had the acetate, and that's what he turned into Omnivore Recordings, for them to clean up the acetate to transfer it for us to get it out on CD. And so it's just one of those. It's just one of those things. So he just has had bad experiences. I mean, he ended up, a graphic designer and designed so many different great albums. I mean, for so many different artists, the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band, Harry Nilsson, several of Harry Nilsson's albums,
Yes.
Linda Ronstadt albums, Steve Martin's albums, Michael Nesmith, a couple of Michael Nesmith albums. He learned at a very early age from being in music. So when Jan has his accident, then he graduates from USC. He's this graphic designer who understands the ins and outs of the industry. So when he's working with an artist, he knows how to tell the artist, okay, here's what you don't do. Here's what you do want to do, so that you get your way, so that you're represented, not just your music is represented the way that you want, but the packaging represents what you want. So I mean, take a look at The Circle Will Be Unbroken by the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band. That's Dean. And that's him knowing the artist. That's him taking the time to know the artist, them knowing him, having a good relationship with them. It was Dean's sister, Kathy Torrance, who did the needlepoint for The Point, Harry Nilsson's The Point.
Mm.
That's Dean's sister did that. When I was in his house, he took me into his daughter's bedroom. He said, "There it is. It's on a frame,
No,
right there on the
really?
wall." Yeah,
That's great.
that was incredible. And it's not covered with glass. It's just the frame with the needlepoint exposed to air. I just thought, oh my God. So he's supposed to be sending me a box of goodies, and I said, don't forget to put your Grammy in there.
What's he going to put on his toilet then, right?
Well, I know, right? Maybe the point.
Great stories. I had no idea that Jan and Dean were that rebellious either. I didn't know that kind of backstory.
Yeah.
That's great. That's amazing.
It's just it's hard to imagine what would have become of Jan and Dean had Jan not had the accident. Obviously, they would have had a television show at least one season. So their music, whatever they were recording, would have gotten out to more people. It's just interesting. It's a lot of, and Jan was becoming a very formidable producer. And he influenced Brian early on in '63. Sure. Jan influenced Brian because Jan was using, Jan had the idea to make a bigger sound because technology was so, you had 4 tracks to work with. Yep. So Jan had the idea of having 2 drummers at the same time so that the sound would be bigger. And so it was kind of Jan's working with the Wrecking Crew members that Brian started to get the ideas. Oh, the guys are out on tour. That's okay because I can use these guys. And so that's kind of one of the influences that Jan had on Brian, and then Brian just took it from there, and just changed music. Oh, we have a surprise guest. Hold on here.
Okay.
Here we go. Maybe we can get him to talk about Jan and Dean. Brent Wilson!
Hi.
Greetings.
Nice to meet you, Brent.
Hi, Buzz. How are you?
Not too bad. And you?
Excellent. Always great to see you, David.
You likewise.
Down there, looking good.
You too.
Yeah.
You too.
How's things in the Carolinas?
Great. There's no mugginess in the weather. It's like low 80s. It just couldn't be better right now. Great walking weather. Great weather to be outside.
I love the fall back east. I miss it.
Oh yeah, the leaves are just starting to change. Yeah. It's nice.
A little late start then on the leaves.
Yeah. Well, you have to come out and visit. Both of you.
I tell you
we'll
what,
go
I
to a
miss
Panthers game
so much. Oh, I love it. Buzz, where are you at?
I'm in Regina, Saskatchewan, Canada, and we're about this close to snow season. So.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So is that like one of those places that has like 2 seasons, like 4th of July and winter?
Yeah, pretty much. Our winter is about 6 months long, it seems at times. So it gets pretty cold, but it is what it is. And where are you, Brent?
I'm in LA. Yeah,
you're in LA. Actually, my son and I actually went to LA this summer. We he's a baseball fan, so we did the Angels game and the Dodgers game, and of course, being a Beach Boy fan, we did all the Hawthorne statue and Capitol Records and all that kind of stuff, and did a bunch of surfing and had a blast. And it was a trip of a lifetime. And we saw the Beach Boys at the Hollywood Bowl as well. So
Oh,
there you
wow.
go.
That's
well,
fantastic. So you caught one of the Fourth of July shows.
yes, the day before, so the July 3rd show, and it was amazing. And Mike sounded great, and Stamos was there, and the crowd was eating him up, and it was a really, really great show. And my son is a drummer as well. He's 16, 17 now,
Okay.
and he got a real kick out of the Beach Boys' new drummer. It was
John
pretty,
Bolton.
That's
pretty amazing,
fantastic.
yeah.
John
And
was
this
on
bowl
a
is
VIP
mhm.
call earlier today, and he's just wonderful. I compare because his drum kit is low. He kind of reminds me of Ringo because he does come off the beat similarly to Ringo, but he
Yeah.
looks like Keith Moon. He acts like Animal from the Muppets.
Yes, he's
Is that-
twirling the
Yeah,
sticks.
it's as though they all got together and had a kid, and it's John Bolton.
That's
Yep.
awesome. That is fantastic. Wow, what a trip, Buzz. That is, yeah. And there's something too about, I saw, I was out of town that weekend. I had tickets, I actually sold them, and just because it would just really bummed me out because I really wanted to go because there's something about seeing them there. I saw Brian there a couple times, of course. And then I saw them there on the 50th tour. They did, and there's just something of course, about playing the Hollywood Bowl. They're back home, and the crowd just, every show is sold out, and there is an energy that comes with playing in that bowl. That is, yeah, it's a special place.
It is, and I'd never been there, obviously, and it's just an iconic, piece of history. The Beatles and Sinatra played there, and it looks so cool, and it sounds amazing, and
Yeah, the
and we had
sound there
decent
is
seats,
great.
so it was
Yeah,
great.
yeah, the sound is always fantastic. Yeah.
It's a
I
bucket
do.
list.
I mean, my wife and I, we probably do the bowl. I don't know, 5, 6 times a season, 4 to 6 times a season. One of those things where we'll do anything. We'll go. It doesn't even really matter who's there. I've never had a bad experience at the bowl. It's just it's always a great show. And of course, the more often you go, then the tricks and the trades, how to get in and how to get out, and all that kind of good stuff. But yeah, I would like to have been to one of those shows because that was a special one, I bet.
Yeah, it was. It was a trip of a lifetime for sure. So, love to go back, but it's pretty expensive. So we're gonna have to wait a while on that.
Did you say you were surfing, Buzz? Did you see you went?
Yeah, yeah.
Really?
We've surfed a while. We go to Tofino every once in a while, and we've surfed
Okay.
in Hawaii, and we did a couple days in Malibu, and where else did we do? Huntington, which tossed us around pretty good. We did Venice as well, but it was a blast. It was a fun trip. So
I would wreck myself if I tried to surf.
take a lesson. Take a lesson. They make a difference. World of difference. The Long Promised Road is such an amazing video. I actually just watched it again just not that long ago.
Oh, wow. Oh, thank you very much. Thank you so
Fantastic.
much. I
Fantastic.
appreciate
What an insight, an intimate look at Brian and where he's at or was at that point. And it's just a gift to fans, I think.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. 'Cause it's funny because I truly intended it as a gift for fans. I mean, as a fan myself, I was like, I'm just going to approach this as if, this is what I would want to see.
Yeah.
I try to do it. You try to do a little balance, right? You want to bring in some new fans, right? I told that to Melinda. I felt there was an obligation to kind of bring in some new fans and expose, Brian's music to a new audience. And so I said, I want to get different people in the film, so I would get, somebody like a Nick Jonas. And if, I think Nick Jonas has got, I don't know, 7 million Instagram followers. If I can get a couple 100,000 of his Instagram followers to become Brian Wilson fans, that would be amazing, and that was important to me. And guys like Jim James, My Morning Jacket, who's just a hardcore rocker. So I tried to kind of find different voices so that you could hear different opinions. Like, to be honest, Jason and I talked about it. He says Paul McCartney's a terrible interview, one. and he always says the same things about Brian every time. So it was like we never even tried to get an interview with Brian, although we did try to get them together.
Mm.
And that was I said I wasn't interested in an interview, but I said what I would do would be really cool if we could pull it off. And we came this close to it. But both of those guys are so damn busy. It's like if had the day of those guys spending the day together. So if Brian and Paul were in the same area at the same time, hanging out, around the piano, playing Beatles songs or Phil Spector songs, or just talking about the past and shooting the shit, talking about sports. I didn't care. You know what I mean? I was like, that would be fun. That would be really cool. But when we were shooting, Brian was constantly on tour, and of course Paul was always on tour. That guy, those two guys, man, they were 80 at the time, 79, 78, something like that. They were working their tails off. And we had a window where Paul was playing the Northeast. He did like New Jersey and Madison Square Garden, and he did a whole little kind of Northeast section, Buffalo, and he had a couple of days off. And then he has a house in the Hamptons apparently. So he was going to spend his 2 or 3 days off at his house in the Hamptons. And Brian was playing upstate New York. And so there at one point we found a day where Brian was going to be traveling a day and Paul was off and at his house in Sag Harbor. So, but what we didn't realize, or at least what I didn't realize, is just how big New York is, upstate New York. And so getting Brian from I think it was where was he? It was like Woodstock, maybe Woodstockish, somewhere up in there, to Sag Harbor was going to take like 6 hours. And it was just too much on Brian to have him spend, 6 hours in the bus, hang out with Paul, and then have to turn around and go 6 hours back, and then and do a show. So that didn't happen. But if I could have had that happen, that would have been cool. That would have been, I would like to have had that. And so we talk about it all the time, and Paul said anything he can do to help in the future. So maybe we'll still get a chance to do something. But I'd like to see those guys hanging out.
No kidding, that would be amazing. I had never seen Springsteen talk about Brian or the Beach Boys before. That was really cool too.
Yeah, and the funny story about that one, Buzz, is so I'm a big Bruce fan, and I had read an interview where it was for his 35th birthday. He was doing a show, or 40th birthday. Maybe it was 40th birthday or something. This is years ago. And he was performing a show in the UK, and he performed When I Grow Up to Be a Man in concert. And I thought, man, that's a deep cut. So I was like, anybody that performs When I Grow Up to Be a Man is a Beach Boy fan, is a Brian Wilson fan. And so I reached out just only on that little thread. Because Bruce talks about Elvis all the time. He talks about Sam and Dave, and he's got Bob Dylan. He's got his heroes, but I'd never heard him say anything about the Beach Boys. Never heard him say anything about Brian. And we reached out, and he immediately said yes. And
really?
Yep. And it was just kind of came down to scheduling, and we shot him we had him for an hour. We had him for an hour, and I had 50 minutes on tape basically, and I could have used all 50 minutes of his interview. It was that good. His interview was amazing. As a matter of fact, it's kind of name dropping, but it is kind of cool. Cameron Crowe, I was emailing back and forth with Cameron, and Cameron was, I asked Cameron for some notes, and he was very kind enough to take a look at the film and said, you don't need any notes, which was really nice. But he did email me, and he goes, hey man, could I have the raw of Bruce's footage? I would love to watch that whole interview. And I'm like, absolutely. So I sent the whole raw to him, and he emailed back, and he goes, this is incredible. And I know that's what I say all the time. It's like, I literally, my editor was like slapping me on the wrist going, all right, that's enough, Bruce. That's enough, Bruce. Because everything he said was so insightful and just so, was just so effusive, and he gave such incredible insight. When he talks about Caroline No, and his insight on Caroline No, which I thought was absolutely amazing. And then he tells a story that it was one of my favorite moments in the film because I wanted to do it for the guys because one of the things that came out of the film, the best thing that came out of the movie for me was, of course, one, I'm now friends with Brian, and that means the world. I'm good
Yeah.
friends with Jason, and that means the world. And I've become really good friends with the crew and the band. And so I've made amazing friends out of the film, and David, and so many people that are in that Beach Boy community that are just lovely people. And so that's probably the best thing that came out of it. And I got to witness firsthand how that band just, they'll do anything for Brian, right? They're musicians, they're caretakers, they're brothers, they're more than friends, and they're more than a band to Brian. Brian loves his band, and those guys love him. To watch how they protect him and just kind of insulate him and put up with his quirks, Paul Mertens told me a funny story about how I think he said every day for 6 months at sound check they had to do Monster Mash. It was like he would just get on a kick, and it was like, all right, Paul, let's do Monster Mash, and it was every day on tour, Monster Mash, dead of summer, and they're doing Monster Mash. I told this story to Gene Stevers the other day, and she goes, "Yeah, absolutely, Monster Mash. That guy loves Monster Mash." So they would do these, put up with all these kind of things with him. And so there was a moment where Bruce talked about seeing the guys, seeing the show, and he said, "Got me a nice seat up front, and I let the music bathe over me," which I thought was a beautiful word because there's something about that music, right? That's, you do bathe in it, right? There's the celebration music, there's there's the deeper cuts, but whatever it is, for some reason the bathe just seems like a good term. You let that music wash over you, and you absorb it in every atom of your body. And so he goes, so I sit in the front row and I just let this music bathe over me. And then I got talking to the guys after the show, and he goes, I thought for sure they were rolling tapes. And if you had bet me money, I would say they were rolling tapes. And he goes, but no, he goes, they just perform that music beautifully because they love that music and they love that man. And so that's one of my favorite clips. I put that in there, and it's a little deviation from the doc, and it doesn't really have, if you watch the doc, you'll there's nothing that kind of leads into it, and there's nothing that kind of leads out of it, but I kind of insisted in putting it in there because I just wanted Brian's band to have that, to have Bruce Springsteen say, yeah, you guys are, a kick-ass band. and I love that he cares so much about how that music is performed, and both, the Beach Boys, and then of course, and Brian, both those guys have got great bands, don't they? Oh my gosh.
Absolutely. Springsteen's comment too about the Beach Boys and the world building and the the sonic landscape that they built that everybody bought into. And when he said that nobody else has ever achieved that, he's right, and that's something that a lot of people don't even think about. But the Beach Boys created a world, right? They didn't just make music. They made this place to go to.
It created this universe. And it's like I do. I mean, I've met a bunch of people that, Alan Boyd for one of them, and David Leaf, and there was a bunch of guys, a bunch of folks that moved to California because of the Beach Boys. And, God, I remember being 13, 14 years old. I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky, and I remember thinking, I want to live there. I want to live where these guys all drive cool cars, and there's always hot chicks around, and there's 2 girls for every boy. It's like, that's where I want to go.
Well, right out of high school, me and a buddy did that. We drove down to California based on, for me anyway, based on those Beach Boys songs, and took my dad's car, 1979 Mercury Monarch, and bought a surfboard, and we lived on the beach for a few weeks. And I wouldn't recommend sleeping on a beach. It ain't fun. But the car ended up breaking down, and long story short, we had to sell the car to get home, and I came home with a surfboard and no car, and my dad wasn't very happy with me for a while.
Oh, that's awesome.
But I do have a surfboard in my basement still, so.
There you go.
Yeah.
You guys might appreciate
awesome.
Audrey, Brian's mother, Audrey, the word that I've been told she always used to describe the music was envelop.
Oh, nice. That's a good one too.
It reminded me is when you're talking about it, kind of being, it's kind of, just having it wash over you.
Yeah, it does. It envelops you. It washes over you. It does this thing where it hits every atom of your body. It's not just your ears. And of course, it just triggers other senses for some reason. And I think part of those senses is your imagination, right? They
Yep,
created this world,
for sure.
and you were so intrigued by that world. You slept on a beach, and you're right. I don't recommend that. That is, kids listening at home, that is not a good
Don't do it. Yeah.
idea.
I'll have to put up some sort of disclaimer.
Yeah.
Scroll across the bottom. Don't try this at home. Don't try this.
No kidding. No
Don't try
kidding.
this at home. Yeah, do not
So
see
Brent,
it.
is there more footage that's going to be made available at some point? Are we going to be able to hear some of these interviews or see some of these scenes that didn't make the final
I
cut?
hope so, Buzz. Yeah, I really do. I hope so. I'd love to be able to get another cut out there. There was my first cut. So the film's an hour and a half, basically. I think it's like an hour 25. And I think my first cut, which I was shocked came in as short as it did, was 2:15, I think. So, so there's a good 45 minutes, 50 minutes of what I consider material good enough to keep in the film that I'd love to have put out. I'd love to have some of those interviews put out. I would love to have just also for the diehards, for those of us that are, that you just want to spend time with Brian, just put together, a whole string out of just Brian and Jason, because there was quite a bit that got left out of those guys. I was trying to find the balance, right? It's like, how much because I really didn't know if the film was going to be accepted. I really didn't. I truly did not know. When we premiered in Tribeca, so the film got delayed a year because of COVID. And, we finished, we got accepted into Tribeca. We were going to be the opening night film for the film festival, Tribeca Film Festival. And I was out buying a suit when we got the word that, the festival, Tribeca Film Festival, was canceling. They were one of the first major events to pull the plug. And of course, at that time, nobody knew it was going to, be a solid, year and 4 months or something. So they finally had it, I want to say July or something, July of 22 or whatever it was, July of 22. And it was an outdoor screening. There was no indoor screenings yet. It was an outdoor screening. And we screened the film and we had a little after party and all of that. And the screening went well. It was great. Everybody was spread out. It was in this big lawn down by the Statue of Liberty and that area, down in like Battery Park. And so everybody was spread out. So you couldn't get a real feel for the audience, because it's daytime, the sun's going down, but it's still, the sun's still out, and everybody's so spread out, and there was a really limited number of tickets. They didn't want a lot of people, so I had no idea if people were liking the film or not. And then you go to this after party, or people are telling you it's great, but they're at the after party. They're your friends. They're supposed to tell you it's great. That's you can't trust them. And that was in a bar. I don't know, about 12:30, 1 o'clock or something, and it was in a bar down in this basement. And I said, well, I might as well go ahead and go online and see what they say, because I truly had no clue. And I went and Googled and started to pull up the first reviews, and I was shocked. I was, because I just didn't know if anybody was going to be as interested as I was in just watching these two guys drive around LA, because that's about, it's a little more than half the movie. It's just these two guys sitting in a car. And there were a lot of times too where I wanted the silence to play, because I felt like I saw Brian saying so much in his silence, and I could read so much in his eyes. But I didn't know if anybody else really could. Me and my editor and I could, we saw it, Hector and I, but I just wasn't sure, so I thought, God, I've got this really weird movie, and how much of this footage do I include of these guys in the car just driving around talking, and Brian terrified to get out, like, we never got out. He got out like one time. He got out, I didn't even include it in the film. He got out at Trancas, at Carl's house. And no, it wasn't Trancas. Where was it? Whose house was it? Oh, it was one of the houses he had when he was with Landy. I guess Landy had taken over his house, on Ferrari. He had a house on Ferrari or something, and Landy had taken over that house and put Brian up in a beach house. And Brian hated living there. Brian hates the beach. He doesn't like the waves. He says the waves scare him, the sound of the waves. And he always talks about the sound, right? You know, Brian. And he says, though, the sound of the waves never stopping, the waves always crashing, scare him. And Jason's like, oh, it's a beautiful house. It's a beautiful day. Let's walk down to the beach. And I was like, oh my God, he's going to get out of the car. This is unbelievable, you know? And he got about halfway down and he goes, no, never mind. I'm going back. I got the crew out, you know, I got 2 cameras. I got one guy running down to the beach. I got this whole big thing going. It's like, he's going to do it. And halfway down, he was like, so here we are. We got, you know, I just have 2 guys in a car. And I just wasn't sure how much, you know, people would enjoy it. But come to find out, I think a lot of people, particularly a lot of the fans, really understood how powerful that is, and understood that, you know, Brian does not allow himself to be vulnerable and does not allow himself to open up, and certainly not in interviews. And so I would like to put together, long story short, I'd like to put together a string out of those 3 days. Essentially, we got 3 really good days out of him, and I'd love to put that together. And I would love to put together all of the footage that we got in the studio, because there was a lot of really cool stuff in the footage, or a lot of really cool footage in the studio. Because that was a time where we just went to Brian, you know, and this goes to my producers and my investor, and they were like, you know, I said, this is what I want to do. You know, I said, I've never seen footage of Brian. Nobody records like what we shot in the film. Nobody records like that anymore, right? They, you know, it's everybody records usually one at a time. You know, you plug your instrument straight into Pro Tools, you know, straight into the mixing board, out of the mixing board, and straight into Pro Tools. And that's why all the studios here are out of business. As a matter of fact, the studio that, you know, Brian doesn't know this, and we talked about, we were not even going to tell him because it would break his heart, but that studio that we recorded at is gone. It's out of business.
Really?
And,
Ocean Way?
Yeah, Ocean Way. Yeah. Which then became Western. And they closed it. And so all the big studios here are closed because everybody records on Pro Tools, and they record them one person at a time. But I said, but I want to see how Brian recorded, you know, when he was doing, you know, Pet Sounds, you know, and everybody in a room. And I want to see that interaction with the band. And the reason you don't do it is because it's really expensive, right? It's much, much cheaper to do this, you know. So we had to fly in everybody, all of Brian's band, you know, some are in Florida, some are in, you know, Illinois, 2 are in Illinois, 1 in Florida, a couple of them here. So we flew everybody in, put them up, you know, rent out that massive studio. Wes, his mixer, who's mixed, you know, Brian's last 4 or 5 albums, said we maxed out every input in that board. He says he's never done that in his career, where literally we used every single input in the board, because, you know, Brian's got a 14, 15 piece band. So if you're miking each instrument with 2 mics, you know, so we used all, and they're all singing. So you got 2 mics, and then you got mics on vocals. So, you know, we maxed out that board, had cables running everywhere. And I told Brian, record whatever you want. I don't care. It was just like, whatever you want to record. It was like, there was no agenda here. You know, there's, if you want to record happy birthday, I just want to see you make music. You know, that's my objective here, is just to see you make music. And that's tough, because when you get, obviously, it doesn't happen. There's very few artists that get that kind of, you know, when you've got labels nowadays cutting costs and all those things, it's like, now where's the hit? You know, where's the, we need this song. Oh, we need the ballad. You know, we need that kind of thing. And Brian's no different. You know what I mean? He's no different than any other artist, where, you know, the labels want to make sure they're getting good return on their money. And they think
it was great
that.
It was great to hear him do Honeycomb. I know he'd mentioned in interviews previously that he wanted to record it, so that was cool. That was a great moment.
Oh my God. So I was at his house the day before, and I took a bunch of tracks over. So I sat down with Mark Lynette, and I got, you know, all these tracks that, you know, he'd never finished, or, tracks that had never been released, tracks that were kind of partially started. And I don't know, I probably had 30 tracks or something to play for him. I took over and said, maybe a couple days before. And I said, all right, we're going to go through these tracks and you tell me, what do you want to record? What songs are we going to record? And the first thing he said was Honeycomb, which I had no recording of, and I didn't even know what that was. I'd never heard of the song Honeycomb. So, I'll flat out admit it. I'd never, ever heard of the song Honeycomb. And so first thing I do, and I said, oh, okay, Honeycomb. All right, great. So, I write it down and, act like I know what I'm doing. Oh, okay, Honeycomb. And then we go through the rest of the songs. And then I get in the car, and I'm leaving, and I Google the song and pull it up. And I'm like, he wants to record this? It was such a, the Jimmy Rogers version is really so cheesy, but Brian's version sounds nothing like it. I mean,
it's great. Yeah.
Yeah, he does a completely different take. And what's really cool, Buzz, from a fan perspective is, so he was super excited to record that song. First thing he said, he picked all the others, he picked It's Okay, he picked Long Promise Road, he wanted to do a little Honda for some reason. And again, I didn't say anything, I was like, everybody was like, Little Honda? Okay, great. Yeah, we can do that. He did some couple Chuck Berry songs. I don't remember what else he did, but so anyway, some really cool stuff. And then we did the new song, of course. We did the Right Where We Belong, did that. But that Honeycomb, when you watch that in film, that's almost in real time. So he literally, Brian doesn't mess around. The joke, the thing with what I always say with the crew is like, we don't bring Brian in until we're ready. It's like, because if you're tweaking a light or you're adjusting a mic and Brian's sitting there, then he gets nervous and uncomfortable. And when he sits down, it's like, you got to go. And you got to go right now. And so that was tip number one from Gene, and so we were like, all right, we're ready to go. And we bring in Brian, and, he comes in from the car, comes down the hallway, and you literally, as it plays out in the film, is almost identical to how it played out in real time. I did very few pull-ups. He sits down, goes straight to the side of the piano, doesn't even say hi to the guys yet, right? You notice in the film, he doesn't start saying hi to people until they start to record. So he doesn't even say hi. He comes in, he sits down, the guys all are there. He starts working on the song. I want to do Honeycomb. And he starts dishing out the parts, telling them how they're going to do it. They're working on it. That kind of happens. And he goes, I'm going to play piano. And then you hear Darian go, yeah, all right. Darian gets really excited and he plops down at the piano. Then he says hi. Hey guys, hi. He was which is like so out of character for Brian, right? Because he's just so, whenever you see him, he's always so friendly and everything, but he was so locked in and he was so focused. And then that recording of Honeycomb, it's like, I don't know, 2 takes, 3 takes or something like that. And the way that it's edited, there's, again, very few pull-ups. He knew exactly how he wanted that song to sound. And, I felt bad. I even apologized to Paul, because Paul Merton's just, one of the finest musicians in the world, right? I mean, there's nothing there's not an instrument he can't play. There's not a song that Brian can't ask for, that guy can't pull out the arrangement for and dish out to that band in 5 minutes. And, because apparently that happens all the time. He'll just ask for something that they haven't worked on, and, they've got to pull it off. God, there was a song they did. Oh, shoot. Even further to that, when I saw him at the Greek a couple of years ago. What's the song from Smile about Hawaii?
He blew Hawaii.
No, not in Blue Hawaii. What is it? Oh, shoot. It's
Rock Roll Plymouth Rock.
Yes. And he apparently wanted to do that, and they never performed that. And so Paul pulled it together, that afternoon during sound check, and they were able to pull it off that night. And I remember even at the concert, Paul going, hey, we've not done this one before. I hope we do it okay. He kind of, prefaced it, but apparently killed it. But during that recording of Honeycomb, he keeps going back to Paul. And he's like, no, Paul, you're doing it wrong. No, Paul, do it
Yeah,
this
he's
way.
instructing him on how he wants the notes, he wants some short, abrupt, quick notes out of
Yes.
the sax. Yeah.
Yeah,
He's like,
yeah.
no, not like that.
Yeah.
Boom, boom,
Yeah,
boom.
staccato,
Okay.
Paul, or yeah, and it's like no, Paul, and then Paul was doing 4 notes instead of 3. He wanted 3 notes, and Paul was playing 4, bum 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 bum, or something like that. No, he's like, no, Paul, bum bum bum. Oh, okay, great. And then Paul do it again. And no, Paul, staccato, short. And I had to call up Paul. I was like, man, I'm sorry, dude. I feel bad, but I just got, but it was so amazing to watch. It was so incredible to see Brian just firing like that. And the same with with Mike and the drums. He knew he had wanted the drums to sound. And so when you see him recording that song, that is pretty much exactly how it all went down in the studio. And so it's the first song, it's the very first thing we're doing. And I'm standing there, and it's a big stage, as you see in the film. And I've told this story in a couple of interviews, but it's worth repeating. And it's, I'm watching Brian record this, and it hits me. I'm like, this is exactly how he did, God only knows, right? This is exactly how he recorded with the Beach Boys, in 1964. He's not doing anything differently, right? They're all in one room, and Brian is on fire, and he is hearing things in his head that nobody else can hear, like Paul Mertens doesn't hear, who's an incredible musician. And I'm sitting there and I'm taking all of this in, and I start to cry. And I just literally, so tears start to kind of stream down my face. And so I don't want anybody to see me crying. So I do kind of one of these things where you don't let anybody kind of, see like you're wiping away. And as I did that, I looked over and I see the grip crying, and I see my art director crying. I see, like all the way down the line, there's like 4 burly guys, all in tears, because every one of them knew they were watching magic, right? It's like you're watching the divine. Right, it's just pure divine inspiration, and it is on display, and it's something I'll never forget. So to answer your question, I would love to get that material out. I'd love for fans to be able to see a little bit more of that. It was a burst. He didn't quite, as we went on, he lost some of his energy, and that's just Brian, right? That's unfortunately just Brian. I always say he doesn't have good days and bad days. He has good hours and bad hours. It's like you can get him great for an hour, and then the rest of the day is shot, and then he'll be great 6 hours later, right? You could lose him for 4 or 5 hours, and then I don't know, 6 o'clock, he comes back to life. And you're like, well, where did that come from? And so you just got to kind of learn to ride those waves. And there was never a wave quite like there was with Honeycomb. There was with, I think Long Promised Road was a close second. There was a real energy with that one. And I think Blondie brought that energy. Blondie was super excited to be doing that song, and he was super excited to be singing on it. And he really appreciated the fact that we were recording that way. He was like, this is, because that's obviously what he knows too. He knows that era, right? He knows this is how
Sure.
The best records are made, or guys in a room riffing off each other. This is how records should be made. And so he was digging it. And so there was a really cool energy with that. And again, and it was Brian's idea, which I thought was interesting, which was really cool. I didn't expect it. And again, I didn't say anything, because it was Brian's show, right? It's Brian's session. But it was Brian's idea for him to just do the chorus. That was all he wanted to sing. So Blondie sings lead, and then Jim James sings the second part, and then Brian just sings the chorus. And at first, when he said that, I was like, God, that's kind of a bummer. I wish Brian was singing more on it. And then when we did the playback, I was like, oh, it's perfect. It's so cool this way, just to hear, because then the music drops out for the chorus, and you just hear Brian do the Long Promised Road, and you just hear his voice by itself, basically, and it made his voice even cooler. Made Brian even cooler by choosing to do it that way. And why? I have no idea. He just hears it in his head, and he was like, Jim, you do this part, and I'm just gonna do the chorus. And I did. I was like, oh man, come on. But he was right,
Yeah.
and it ends up being so cool. So yeah, if I can talk our investors into it and or our distributors, yeah, I would love to do maybe an anniversary cut where we can get get some additional footage, get some additional interviews in there. Like I said, there's a lot more Brian, or a lot more Bruce, which was really great. Jim James was great. Linda Perry was a fireball. I could have used so much more of her stuff. I wasn't really familiar with Linda.
Oh, she's great.
Yeah, somebody had recommended her to us, and then of course I went and researched, her credits, and I was like, oh, holy shit, okay,
Yeah.
this is
Yeah, she's the real deal. Yeah.
yeah, she's got chops.
Yeah.
And so I emailed her. They gave me her email. So this is if you know Linda, Buzz, you clearly have an idea of who she is. So this answer is not going to surprise you. So I emailed her and got her email, and I give my spiel. Would you like to do this interview? It's Brent Wilson documentary. It's a definitive documentary with Brian. It features this person and this person. I've got a whole spiel I do, for trying to get people. And all I get back from her is, fuck yeah.
I love it.
That was it.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Well, it was an amazing project, and it came across perfectly. And like I said, just what a great treat for fans. And you got so many amazing stories, man. I wish this could go on for like 5 hours, but unfortunately, we don't have time.
Oh,
Well,
no,
Brent, one of the things that I'm hoping, because I know you did interviews with all the band members,
yeah,
that weren't able to make the final cut.
yeah.
But what we do get to see in the documentary, and I'm hoping will be bonus material for fans of Brian's, that have gone out and see Brian through the years watching him tour, is we get to see Nick Walusko, who's unfortunately no longer with us.
Yeah.
And I think for me, being able that not solely the only element, obviously all the things you've touched on already are what make it such a great documentary, but for me, being able to see Nick and with his bandmates around the microphone, whether they're doing the hand claps or the singing, or he's doing the guitar work, what have you, because Nick like Darian, because they were buddies coming up, and got into Brian's band together. We're in the Wonderments, and I've got a bunch of Nick solo material where he even does covers of Tuesday Afternoon by the Moody Blues and stuff. It's just really great stuff. I mean, Nick was such a true acolyte of Brian's music.
Yes. And he was a sweet man, and it just kind. But one of my favorite nights, we were shooting at the Ryman, and because they were doing 2 nights there, they spent the night in Nashville. They weren't moving on, and so we were all at the same hotel. And you're back at the bar, right? You're at the hotel bar, and me and Blondie and the band, and we're all getting pretty lit, and just having drinks with Nick, and that night, it was just fun, right? He was just so happy to be out there on the road, so happy to be living his dream, and just a great guy, and apparently, a genius, mathematician, and
really
knows something about everything.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you could. Now, I'm just going to use anything as an example, but he could probably have done it. If somebody were to kind of come, if they're eating dinner together, and somebody were to say they were eating Paul Mertens gave this example to me. So if somebody were eating shrimp and made a comment, and Nick was there, and they're having dinner, and they made a comment, I wonder how much cholesterol's in shrimp. I've heard it has cholesterol. Nick would be able to go into a full dissertation about the types of cholesterol that are in the shrimp and explain to you the benefits and the negative things of why you won't want to eat shrimp. But on the other hand, he'd be able to explain the benefits of the shrimp. So I mean, he just seemed to know everything about anything.
Yeah. And he gave
Really
a great interview. All those guys did. It was there was a lot of cuts. I just kept shooting. You know what I mean? It was one of those things where, as a doc filmmaker, my philosophy is you don't know what your story is. Like, I had no idea, and I'll give you a great example of that, is that I had no clue, zero expectation that Brian was going to talk about Carl and Dennis so much. Zero. I thought for sure that subject was going to be verboten. It was just, he's just not going to talk about it. And it's literally all he talks about, is Carl and Dennis. And so, my theory is that the more you shoot, the more you get, the better it becomes. And so I just kind of kept shooting and shooting and shooting. And then finally, somebody says, okay, pencils down. You got to go edit this thing. But because, I feel like as a doc filmmaker, my job is just to assemble, and you gather and gather and gather, and then you go find the story. And yeah, the story ended up becoming about how much Brian loves and misses his brothers, in my mind, because which is why, I knew it was really controversial to call the film Long Promised Road. I knew, it was funny because I knew when it got out there, I was like, oh man, I'm going to catch so much hell for this. People are going to just, another Hollywood jackass who doesn't know anything about the Beach Boys. And, don't they know that's Carl's song, and and all of that. And I was like just begging people, like, just be patient. I promise that the title will reveal itself. I promise you it will make sense when you see the film why it's called Long Promised Road.
Perfect.
And I went to Jerry Schilling, and I'll leave you guys leave you this last story. It was because it was so much about Brian and Carl and Dennis, and because Brian kept wanting to hear the song over and over again. In the film he asks to hear it 2 or 3 times, but over the 3 days that we shot, he probably asked to hear it 15 times, right? I just didn't show all, the other 13 times that he asked or whatever. But he kept asking to hear that one, and It's Okay is the other one that he keeps asking to hear over and over and over again, which again is kind of a mantra for him when he gets nervous. It's okay, it's okay. And so the story comes about these brothers, and he asking to hear the song. The song, metaphorically does represent Brian's journey. There is some connection there. The guys are on the road. That's in the title. It's like, that's kind of cool. And but it's like, it's a Carl song, and so I didn't want to do it if I couldn't get the permission from Carl's family. So because it's a Carl song. So I don't know Carl's family. I don't know his boys. We've emailed and things like that. They've been very, very kind. But I went to Jerry Schilling, who was, who manages the Beach Boys, and he was Carl's best man at his wedding, and Carl was his best man at his wedding, and then he managed Carl when he was solo. And Jerry is a legend in the music industry, but he's also a vital character in the story of the Beach Boys. And so I went to Jerry, and we had lunch, and and I said, this is my idea. I don't think anybody knew Carl better than you did. What do you think he would think? And he started to tear up, and he goes, I think it's the greatest honor you could give him. And I was like, okay, that's it then. And so that's how we got the title. And then I caught shit after we released the title. Well, Hollywood jackass doesn't know anything.
That's right. Well, I thought what another kind of perfect element for me was that it was with Jason, so that you felt that even Brian was talking so much about his brothers, Jason kind of by proxy filled the role.
Yeah.
It was like you felt that Brian was so comfortable around Jason, it was almost like he was a brother, if nothing else, a spiritual brother.
100%. Yeah. I haven't seen anybody else in Brian's life that has the relationship with him that Jason does. I've spent a lot of time with Brian, since the film, and gotten to know him really well, and he's got a lot of wonderful friends and a lot of people that love him, but him and Jason really do have just a wonderful connection about him, and I always say, Brian reads vibrations, man. He does. He'll call, if he doesn't like you, he doesn't like you. And because he reads vibes, and so the crew, I was really proud of the crew. Because I had been told that it was like, if he doesn't like you, this isn't going to happen, right? It was like, this will cease to exist. And so I hired crew that were really mellow and really chill, and wanted to have people that didn't get excited easy, and because production's very hectic and very stressful, and it's insanity, just wrangling cats, right? And particularly with Brian Wilson, it's like wrangling cats. It's like wrangling tin cats. And I'll give you a really funny story on that note too. I'll give you one really funny one that maybe my favorite story of the whole shoot about wrangling cats. But I wanted people who could just be relaxed and chilled, and that's what Jason brings to the table, right? It's like he's just got this very mellow approach to him, and Brian reads that and picks up on that. And there was a famous producer that I asked Gene, I won't say his name, but I asked Gene, I said, hey, how come you've never thought about putting Brian and so-and-so together, who's got an excellent reputation for reviving careers or second chapters in career. You guys can figure it out. And she goes, yeah, we did put them together and Brian didn't like it. And I'm like, what? It's like, yeah, they were together in the room and Brian just like, I didn't like his vibe. And that was it. And I was like, oh, holy shit, this guy's, ton of Grammys. And, it was like, but if he doesn't get that vibe, and the guy's probably a really nice person, right? I know he's a really nice person. I've never heard anybody say anything bad about this guy. And he works with only the best, right? So he has to be a really nice guy. But if Brian doesn't pick up on that vibe, man, it is, he just shuts it down. But I'll tell you this last story. And I'll let you guys go because I'll talk your ears off. But so I'll talk about wrangling cats. So this is my favorite story from the shoot, Buzz. So with Brian, we stopped planning. Right, there was at a certain point you just go, okay, I'm not gonna schedule. We would try to schedule restaurants. We would try to schedule locations, and the second you pick him up, he's like, no, I don't want to do that. And the whole point of the shoot is never to stress Brian out. And it's okay, my dog. And so you never wanted Brian to be stressed out. So if he didn't want to do something, we just didn't do it, and we would scramble, right? Or if there was something he wanted to do and it wasn't cleared, we tried to make it happen because that was just the whole vibe. And so one day we're cruising and we're down in Malibu, and he wants to go to Nobu for lunch. And Nobu is probably the most exclusive restaurant in LA. The Nobu in Malibu is probably the most exclusive restaurant in LA. And for example, I took my wife there for her honeymoon or for her anniversary, and it took me 4 months to get a reservation. Okay, that's the kind of place it is. It's 4 months, and it was 2 people, and it cost me $900. It's that kind of a joint, right? So Brian loves sushi, and he goes, hey, let's go to Nobu for sushi. And it's like, oh shit, okay, all right. So I get on the phone with my production coordinator, call the production coordinator, and I said, hey, Brian wants to go to Nobu for lunch. Can you call and see if you can get us a reservation? Call, absolutely not. It's Saturday afternoon. It's a beautiful day in Malibu. The restaurant goes out over the ocean, so the waves crack up underneath of it, and it's a beautiful day. It's Saturday, no way. She goes, it's for Brian Wilson. I don't care if it's Barack Obama. It doesn't matter. We don't have an opening. And so call back, and I said, all right, do me a favor, call our producer, Teresa. Teresa, our producer, calls our investor, who calls Jerry Jones, the owner of the Dallas Cowboys, who knows Nobu, who knows the chef Nobu, who calls Nobu, the chef in Vegas. He's in Vegas. They just opened a hotel. And so he's there for the opening of the hotel. Mr. Nobu calls back down and says, you get a table for Mr. Brian Wilson. Yes, Mr. Nobu. 15 minutes later, comes back. Brian, we got a table at Nobu. We're heading to Nobu. Brian goes, you know what? Let's just go home and have some pizza and watch the baseball.
Are you kidding? That's great.
Right, Brian, what do you want? Pizza Hut? Papa John's? What are you thinking?
Oh my Lord.
Brilliant.
That encapsulates that whole shoot. That is what it was like every day. Let's just go have pizza and watch the baseball game.
Wow.
All right, buddy, let's go watch the baseball game. We'll go watch the baseball game. And so we had to call back and cancel that reservation. Oh my God. Yeah. So yeah, it was one of my greatest producing moments. The fact that we made that happen and it went for naught.
Wow.
And unfortunately, I was in the car. I just would have, sent him home and gone to Nobu.
Of course.
If I had a way to get home, I just would have. Hey, you guys take Brian home. I'm going to Nobu.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was great. Buzz meeting you. Fantastic, man. It would sound like just a die-hard fan. Anybody that will live on the beach to chase that California dream. That's legit. That is.
Well, it's amazing music, man. It's life-changing music, right?
It is. Yeah. It really is. Yeah. And I know it does that for some. I've got hundreds of emails from people, and that I've saved every one of them, and about the music. We interviewed a lot of fans. None of the fans made the cut, but I interviewed a lot of fans because I knew there'd be some remarkable stuff in there, and I was going to try to use it as kind of bumpers between scenes, but it just, ended up. I'd rather have 5 minutes of more Brian, that kind of a thing. But there was just so many beautiful stories from fans and stuff. It's remarkable how that music has touched so many people, and and it's a good time to be a fan. It's
It is.
the box sets have been great, and I think what Iconic and those guys are doing, taking over the brand and managing the brand, they've done a great job, and the Grammy special turned out so much better than I imagined. I was like, that music is so hard to perform and really tough to pull off, and what they did a great job. And
The Grammy band got lucky. They hired Probe and Gregory to be a part of the band. I think that's part of the
absolutely 100%. Yeah, 100%. So it was. So it's a good time to be a fan. All the box sets have been terrific. The guys are still out there, and I'm hoping Brian goes back out. I'm still hoping. It'd be great to see him go back out there, and because I know he loves the tour. I know he loves it. I know he misses it. I think it's just getting up his. Just the reality of being 83 is just hard. Just having the strength. I told Gene, I was like, God, I would love to see those guys do like a residency someplace. That way he doesn't have to travel. Set up in Vegas or something, and do some kind of residency and play there 3 or 4 nights a week, and because he loves to stay in hotels. Dude loves hotels.
Oh, really?
Oh, he loves it. Loves being there
because he gets catered to, right?
I always say, everybody says Brian hates touring, and I was like, no, Brian loves touring. Brian hates being on stage, but he loves touring. I mean, he gets terrified still being on stage, which he talks about in the film, but he loves touring. If he could live his life on the road, in a hotel, getting room service, going to a theater, doing sound check with his band, and then sitting in his chair and then watching somebody else perform, he'd be the happiest person in the world. If he could do everything except go out on stage, I think he'd be the happiest guy in the world.
I think that ought to be the next tour that he does, where they put him in a pulpit. They only choose venues where there's a pulpit with an orchestra where he could just sit down there and watch the band, and you could get VIP seats around him.
Yep,
right?
Exactly.
Because it's like
watch it.
Brian's shows are like going to an art exhibit.
Yep.
I mean,
why not? The thing I love about Brian is Brian loves his music, right? Which is really cool. It's like, this guy is, he's the most humble human being in the world, right? But he loves his own music. He really does. He likes to listen to it, and he loves his band, and he's like, that's a good song. It's like, that's good music. And so if he could just listen to his music, he'd be very happy. Great. But
Brent,
it's great meeting you, Buzz, and
you too.
LA, hit me up, dude. Next time you're down this way.
All right.
Like I said, we got pretty good surfing in Redondo.
Yes.
I'm a block from the beach. We got some good surfing down here. So I'll sit on the beach and watch it. I'll buy you a beer afterwards.
I'm in. Sounds great.
It's this is not the age to take up surfing for me. This is no midlife crisis in my future.
Well, Well, Brent, it was really nice meeting you. And thanks again for doing what you do. That doc is just amazing. So thank you.
No, that means the world, man. Thanks, means the world. David, keep doing what you're doing, man. Always anything I can always do to help David. I love the fact that he keeps the community together and
Yes.
just keeps the word out there, and keeps the summer alive. Keeps the summer alive.
Thank you, Brent.
Very underrated song, by the way.
I
Very
love that
underrated.
song. Yeah,
I
Randy
love that
Bachman.
song.
Yeah.
Very, very underrated song. All right, gentlemen, be good. David, take care of yourself, my friend, and best of the fam.
All right.
See
Thanks.
ya. Take care, Buzz.
Thank you. Thanks, Brent.
Bye-bye.
How amazing was that? That was awesome. What? That dude has some great stories. Holy
Yes.
jeez.
I'd not heard. I mean, some of the things he shared. He has shared in other interviews that I've seen, but the one about the restaurant, I'd not heard.
That's amazing. That might be the
Jerry
best thing I've heard all
Jones. He
day.
gets Jerry Jones to call the owner, and then no, let's just do pizza.
But I can totally see Brian doing that, right? Like,
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, yeah, that was a lot of fun.
yeah, thank you for making this happen. I really appreciate it. And thank you for ESQ. I mean, this is the definitive, place to get news on the Beach Boys. And, like Steve Lewis said in his interview with you not that long ago, this magazine just gets better and better and better. It's fantastic.
Thank you. I
I
appreciate.
know it's got to be a lot of work to put together, but it's appreciated.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. Thank you very much.